On January 30th, 1948, something happened that no one could have imagined. Mahatma Gandhi, the messenger of peace and the father of India, was shot in Delhi. The killer was a young Hindu nationalist named Nathuram Godse. Godse didn't try to run away. He was arrested right there and taken to court for the murder trial. From the very beginning, Godse confessed to his crime. He insisted on making a statement in court. He wanted to explain his actions and justify his crime. Godse's trial began in May 1948. The world was watching as Gandhi's killer stood in the courtroom. He listened carefully as the charges against him were read. He denied the conspiracy charge but confessed to the murder. Godse claimed he acted alone, driven by his conscience and his sense of duty. His confession laid the groundwork for a trial that would shake India. Godse's trial wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a platform for him to air his grievances. He used his statement to launch a scathing attack on Gandhi's policies. Godse believed that Gandhi had betrayed Hindus by appeasing Muslims. He argued that Gandhi's emphasis on non-violence had weakened India. He claimed that Gandhi was responsible for the partition of the country. Godse spoke for hours, laying out his views. He spoke about Hindu pride, historical injustices, and the need for a strong Hindu nation. His words resonated with some, especially those who shared his anger and resentment over the partition. His statement was a calculated justification for his actions. It was an attempt to transform himself from villain to hero. At the heart of Godse's anger was the partition of India in 1947. The creation of Pakistan, a Muslim-majority state, was a traumatic event for many Hindus. Millions were displaced, and there was widespread violence and bloodshed. Godse blamed Gandhi for this tragedy. He argued that Gandhi's support for Muslim rights had emboldened the Muslim League. He accused Gandhi of forcing the Congress Party to accept the partition. Godse believed that Gandhi's dream of a united and independent India was naive. He felt that Hindus and Muslims could never coexist peacefully. He saw the partition as a betrayal of the Hindus, who he believed were the true inheritors of India. Godse's views were extreme, but they were shared by a segment of Hindu society who felt let down by Gandhi and the Congress. Godse's arguments weren't made in a vacuum. He drew heavily on a narrative of historical grievances that went back centuries. He cited examples of Muslim rulers who he claimed had oppressed Hindus. He spoke of the destruction of Hindu temples and forced conversions to Islam. Godse pointed to the 1920s Khilafate movement, where Gandhi had allied with Muslim leaders. He highlighted the Mopla rebellion in Kerala, where Hindu landlords were targeted. He spoke of the communal riots that had plagued India before partition. Godse used these examples to paint a picture of a Hindu community under siege. He argued that Hindus had been victims of historical injustice and that Gandhi had ignored their suffering. Godse was a fierce critic of Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence. He believed that Gandhi's emphasis on pacifism had left India vulnerable in the face of aggression. He argued that Gandhi's non-violent resistance had only emboldened the British and later the Muslim League. Godse believed that violence was sometimes necessary to achieve political goals. He argued that Hindus had a right to defend themselves, even if it meant using force. He saw Gandhi's pacifism as a form of cowardice that left Hindus open to attack. The rejection of non-violence was a fundamental difference between Godse and Gandhi. It was this difference that ultimately led him to commit murder. Godse believed he was acting out of a sense of duty, or dharma. He argued that it was his moral obligation to eliminate Gandhi, whom he saw as a threat to Hindus. He compared himself to Lord Ram, who killed the demon King Ravan to rescue Sita. He saw Gandhi as a modern-day Ravan and himself as a righteous warrior. Godse's justification rested on a distorted interpretation of Hindu scriptures. He used religious imagery and language to legitimize his actions. He tried to portray himself as a selfless patriot, a man willing to sacrifice everything for his country. However, many saw his actions as a desecration of Hinduism and a betrayal of its core values of peace and compassion. In the aftermath, the trial ended in November 1949. Godse was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to death. Godse's co-conspirator Narayan Apte was also sentenced to death. 6 others were sentenced to life imprisonment. Godse was hanged on November 15, 1949, at Ambala Jail. He went to the gallows, unrepentant, convinced that he was a martyr for Hinduism. Nathuram Godse's trial and execution did not end the debate about his motives or the legacy of his actions. Godse's court statement, published posthumously as "Why I Killed Gandhi," continues to be a source of controversy and debate. It serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of religious extremism and the enduring power of hate. The assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by Nathuram Godse was a pivotal moment in Indian history. It cast a long shadow over the newly independent nation, deepening communal divisions and fueling Hindu nationalism. Godse's name became synonymous with extremism and violence, a stark contrast to Gandhi's message of peace and non-violence. In the decades since the assassination, some right-wing Hindu groups have embraced Godse as a hero and patriot. They often celebrate his legacy and ideology, glorifying his actions. This glorification of violence is deeply troubling, especially in a country still grappling with the legacy of partition and communal tensions. Godse's motivations is crucial for understanding the complexities of modern India. His act of violence was not an isolated incident, but the result of a particular historical context and deeply held beliefs. By studying his life, his writings, and his trial, we gain insights into the forces that shape religious extremism and political violence. While we must condemn Godse's actions, we must also engage with the uncomfortable truths that his life and death represent. We must acknowledge the dangers of religious intolerance, the seductive appeal of extremist ideologies, and the fragility of peace.